Hey everyone. We're bringing it home, I guess, or we're getting close to it. I hope you all had a great conference, and a major kudos to Alex, to the fellows. I hope you're all enjoying yourselves as much as I am. This is going to be a fun panel. With me, I have a very diverse group of investors that have a great deal of experience across enterprise and consumer. Some of them have had incredible careers in tech before. So let's just start with a quick introduction, each of you maybe. Your area of investment, a favorite moment or investment in the past, just to get to know everyone. Go ahead.
Everybody, Shawn, Carolan. I'm a partner at Menlo Ventures, been there 23 years, started a company in the middle of that journey, about 10 years in, that I proceeded to lose all the money in, so learned a lot of lessons in that. But fortunately, I'm a better investor than I was an entrepreneur, so a lot of investments in Uber and Chime and Roku and a bunch of other cool ones. Siri was actually, we were the very first term sheet for Siri, who obviously has lost the race to ChatGPT, but it was a fun journey to be on before Apple got them.
I'm Jesse Ma. I'm with the Fellows Fund. After 30 years working in the high-tech industry, building AI-powered products like Google Assistant and Microsoft Advertising, I decided to jump in the VC world. So I'm relatively new, very excited.
Hey everybody, my name is Lucas. I'm an investor at Sound Ventures, based out of LA. It's like a 15-year-old firm founded by Ashton Kutcher, about $2 billion under management. And we mostly focus on sort of early stage, like Series A, Series B stage AI application layer businesses. And then also big investors in OpenAI, Anthropic, and some of the infrastructure businesses. And a highlight in our portfolio is one that we share with Fellows Fund, which is a company called GC.AI. We have Cecilia in the back row, which is an AI platform for in-house legal teams. And so have been able to get to know the Fellows Fund group through that investment.
Thanks for having me. I'm BG. I'm a partner at San Francisco and Austin firm, 8VC. We manage about $8 billion. We're mostly early phase investors in many different areas, mostly enterprise software, AI applications, infrastructure, AI-enabled services, but we also do defense and healthcare and supply chain logistics. We also incubate companies. I've had the pleasure of starting 3 companies as part of our incubation program, but investments keep me busy. Old-timer from Oracle, RDBMS Group, Yahoo Ads Infra. JC and I were at Yahoo during the same time, and then was the head of LinkedIn data infrastructure in a past life. Proud of all of our companies, but I'm increasingly focusing on AI-enabled services of all kinds, BPO. But in my heart, I've always been an infrastructure guy, so data and AI infra.
That's great. So thank you for powering everything I do at work and in my personal life too. You guys are responsible. And I know you're going to usher us on the other side of this exciting era that we're in right now. This panel was all about the gap to adoption. Alex would say traction. If capital's the fuel, what happens on the other side when you light it? Because we have a great mix of consumer and enterprise here, would love to have you share with the audience what you see as the greatest gaps to adoption. Choose one or the other, enterprise or consumer, as we go into this next year. What's in the way of getting traction and escape velocity or scale for all the great companies that are innovating right now? Go ahead, Bhaskar, you start.
Sorry. Given our backgrounds in ads, I think it will be. I think enterprise, surely in departments like marketing, legal, and other areas, I think workflows and content generation stuff is working very well. I think unstructured data extraction is working very well. I think one of the challenges with dropping AI into the enterprise, whether it's co-pilots or agents, is I think the overall observability, governance frameworks of how you actually know things are working properly, how do you recover, is still, I think, not yet battle tested. And I would say ROI also. I mean, Where do you put in copilots for improved productivity versus fully agentic stuff? Those are two areas that I think are not sexy, but will have to be innovated on till we reach what I call a reference architecture of inserting AI in the enterprise. So mundane stuff.
Mundane, but huge. Those subsystem connections are still very brittle. Sitting on the enterprise side, I can tell you, a 20-year-old company, there is no AI-first infrastructure. There is no such thing. So maybe we can continue on. Lucas, what do you think? Consumer or enterprise? Take your pick.
Yeah, I think within consumer, it's a different world than enterprise today, where the vast majority of the pie is still covered by the general purpose tools, the ChatGPTs and Geminis of the world. And there, our general perspective is it requires a step function improvement in order to generate a big outcome or be in a category that is difficult for the general models to compete with. And so historically, like companionship has been a category that OpenAI has been reluctant to pursue in a real way, and as a result, you get standalone players that are building really big businesses. But ChatGPT is very good at a lot of things, and so we're really excited about like voice and a lot of also what the panel before us was discussing around video as some of these categories that can create really large consumer outcomes outside of the base research lab consumer products that are covering most of the surface area today.
I found that fascinating, this companionship thing. You mentioned a couple of different companies. Like, what makes that such a appealing space versus some of the others? Is it looser model quality acceptance, or what is it? Is it something much deeper that goes with human psyche? What is that?
I mean, I think it's a combination of human psyche and a lack of willingness for the largest players to pursue that area, right? Which is interesting that Grok is potentially changing, that paradigm. But if you spoke to like the character AIs of the world, part of it was we're going to pursue something that is difficult for the big companies to pursue. But no, I think it's always been obviously a big demand that folks have, and there's sadly like a loneliness crisis, and there's a desire for all sorts of companionship. But it's a different type of workflow inherently than I think what the base models offer.
That's great. JC?
Yeah, I think adoption is doing really well in 3 areas. One is coding. I think it's non-controversial. Customer support, second area is the adoption is quite well. And the market is huge. And you can see if you make a phone call, likely you still kind of hit some very robotic automation or even human. So market is still expanding very rapidly, and you can see some examples like Sierra, the co-founder I chatted with this morning. They are on track of reach like $100 million ARR by end of this year. So market is really expanding. The third area is content generation. So I think most people in this room kind of use some thought of AI content generation tools. So in terms of Copilot versus automation, I think the concept of Copilot with the human in the loop, the adoption is quite high, but the fully automation is relatively low. That's because of the limitation of tool use in the current large language models and so on. So there's no kind of simple answer to your question, but yeah,
Just
depends.
maybe build on that a little bit. How given the complexity that you're talking about, and the lack of a simple, solution, how does a smaller company get a foothold in that mess that we're talking about? I'm a startup person too. I've had a couple companies in my past. It was a fortunate part of my coming up in the Valley. But one of the things we really struggled with was, what's the point of entry when you have that level of complexity? What are you seeing that's sort of working for smaller companies to get a foothold in the enterprise? And maybe, Shawn, you can talk about that too. Yeah,
my take is I think for small company to play in the enterprise role, you really need to focus, focus certain areas, understand the customer pain and where you add value, and do very decent job. Yeah.
Excellent. What do you think?
Yeah, just to answer your last one, I think that small companies are getting traction in the enterprise, and you got to solve a specific pain point. I broaden that to consumer too. I'm a consumer guy, and to state the obvious, there is no consumer adoption problem with AI, right? Like ChatGPT is, I think, just crossed 700 million weekly active users. We have this consumer AI research survey that adds a bunch of stuff. The shocking part is not that all of you in the room use it, which I'm sure you do, but like my mother-in-law uses it to figure out how to prepare her, glass noodles or something, right? Like it's just the preponderance of use cases is shocking. And, most you think of like an Uber launches, you use Uber when you need a ride. It's like one use case. And what's shocking about, the current LLMs are the breadth of the use cases. So I think that's working well already. And then maybe the next step in that question, though, is like, okay, well, what's it going to take for some of these vertical AI consumer apps to come out? And I think there's like some infrastructural stuff which matters, right? You think of like access to credentials is a big deal, right? You can't do anything for me on the internet unless you have my username and password. The trust issue, there's a bunch of stuff like that. But I think it's always for consumers, how do you make it like so easy to adopt something? Like I have a problem, I go here and it's immediately solved for me, or I do no effort and then I get reward back. And so, for example, people are using ChatGPT for relationship advice or having a relationship with somebody. But, there is no question in my mind there will be like a granola AI coach, which just is watching you all day, sees your calls, sees your texts, sees your emails. You kind of say, here's my goals. I want to get better at X, Y, and Z. And then at the end of the week, you get like a brief that says like, oh yeah, you were mean in that meeting and you didn't talk enough in this meeting. And here's what you can do next week, right? Like, that's a valuable service people pay thousands of dollars for. And anytime you see people spending money on a valuable service and then AI can attack it, like it will happen.
Did we lose?
Hello. Yeah. I think just to refresh the question, it was about the advantages that startups might have. So we do see like a hugely bimodal thing happening. I think AI native founders doing startups, if you ignore infrastructure building, which still remains hard, just doing application startups, workflow automation startups, is just a lot faster now. You will use Ramp and Notion and Linear and other stuff below you. In the sense, these founders with a small set of teams can basically get a lot of their business departments to work autonomously very quickly, whether it's in lead gen, whether it's top of the funnel. That's a new phenomenon. Now, how much will this scale? So that they can focus on the core product a lot more. Of course, they're using coding Copilot, so their engineering is going faster also. But just using different business application agents to make their business decisions and business movement faster for different departments is something that we are actually seeing so that you can focus on your core product. Now, the question that comes up if you start thinking about it as an early phase investor is, should VC firms also offer what we call a reference architecture? That you have a bunch of agents and copilots for different departments that you kind of offer out of the box to your portfolio companies so that the companies can just focus. So these questions are interesting to us for application and workflow companies. We're just seeing the path from 1 to 10 million be a lot faster because of some of this automation available. So that's an interesting phenomenon, which I think larger companies are struggling to adopt that quickly. The moment you have a flywheel, which is part manual, part old school, something to point out.
I love that. Yeah. Okay, I get 2 microphones. Let's stick with that, with with where Bhaskar you just left off. This MIT study was going around not too recently. You saw 95% of AI investments are not hitting ROI. That was a very controversial view. I don't believe that. I'm an investor in my company, so just want to say I'm definitely not on board with that. But I do wonder what is behind that. Is it early model quality outputs? Is it subsystem disconnects? Is it trust in the enterprise itself? Is it retraining the way that, I like the way you put it, Shawn, like it's just got to be easy. Is it the use cases are too scattered? Like what are the things that are preventing enterprises from coming up with something that doesn't look that negative? Because I really found that to be odd. You want to start? Yeah. We're sharing. Sharing is caring.
I mean, a consistent trend when we have enterprise conversations is just the expectations versus reality of what is promised and what is delivered. Like I think even in the largest of fundraisers for application layer businesses, often case they're primarily co-pilot type solutions with a promise to becoming something that can complete much more end-to-end workflows over time. And I think there can be a tendency to promise something much more agentic, for instance, when the solution can be more co-pilot-esque. And so, I think a lot of it relates to the expectation in terms of ROI versus what's actually delivered.
I think that study was bullshit.
Yeah, I love
Like
that.
it takes a while to implement stuff. It takes a while, change management inside of a company is very slow. People are not used to using these tools, right? Like it's not connected to everything. It hasn't passed audit yet. So I think it's just like, how long have all of these APIs been out where it's just, you're talking about a couple more years before you need to see things
There's
just
like
immediately
organizational
work.
ossification, basically change resistance or just fear by the users inside the companies. Is that it?
It just takes time. Like you probably look across everybody's portfolio. There's pockets of people who figured it out and it's working like hell.
Hey, talk about that a little bit. Where is it just crushing? Like, what are the things that are like, okay, we're ripping the skin off the ball right now. It's easy. The use case is super understandable. It's sticking with enterprise.
Yeah, BG mentioned the coding. Or what did you see? Like, there's sophisticated users. There's a very concrete piece of output they need to produce. Does it, meet spec? And so, obviously we're big investors in Anthropic. A huge part of their business is just powering, Cursor and Claude Code and Windsurf and all of these other coding models because like it just works for everybody. If you have the right context and you can specify your problem, like the code is good and way faster than a human. So that's one. Customer service has been a huge one for companies like Chime, where you think of early self-driving, where I forget it was like interventions per mile. Like how many times did you have to grab the steering wheel from the Waymo without it crashing, right? But that number went down as things got trained up, and that's kind of like what's happening in customer service right now. You got like a deflection rate is the key metric, and it started out as 5 or 10% deflection rate, and in many places it's 60 to 80% deflection rate now. So those are probably two that is just clearly making a huge impact.
I love it. Love to hear the rest of the crew on this one. Yeah.
I'll just add, I find there's things that were not working 4 months ago that are working 2 months later. Like AI interviewing is an interesting category for like high volume hourly employers that over the last few months has started to work in a very real way. And now any business that is hiring at a really significant rate where the bottleneck is the human labor associated with processing all of this inbound demand is usually now using one of a few like Series A stage providers of these AI interviews. And like we don't know where the value is going to accrue, but that was something that was like not working a year ago. That is now working like within large enterprises, and like recruiting teams are being like restructured around it, and so it's changing very quickly as well.
Yeah, I think definitely there could be some selection bias. Like if you choose projects in the coding area or customer support area or content generation automation area, I think the success rate would be much higher. And I also chat with the OpenAI head of engineering for API. So they have been working very closely with the customers. So, and the best practice in order to lead to a successful deployment is first, the organization need a top-down mandate, buy-in from the top. Then you need a bottom-up team, something called the Tiger team, to work with the vendors. In their case, is the OpenAI team, and to understand the customer problem and work and implement and deploy. Then there's it's unlikely out of box you get ROI. So there's a hill climbing phase you have to go through. So you need to define what is the success metrics, and then you improve over time. And so you need a little bit more patience in order to get to the ROI.
Yeah, I think JC covered it really well. And he talked about confirmation bias also. I think if you think about it, think about adoption of cloud and think about adoption of ML. People are still trying to migrate to the cloud. And ML, I would say, is the most successful piece of AI that's working even in regulated industry, of course. We started in ads and search. So we have to kind of put that hat on, that when you insert AI, to us, I would say three things matter. There's persona geometry, there's product geometry, there's budget geometry, which is highly departmental. And you have to think about how do you insert AI, what's the design aspect to it. Let me give you an example. We have this amazing small company called Tazy, which built this agentic AI AI-based recruiter. Full workflow automation, including AI-based interviews. And when we went to market, we found that that the VP level and above, everybody wanted it and would assign huge budgets to it. But inserting it was a non-trivial challenge. Inserting it means you cannot just replace a recruiter. You have to do autonomous stuff. You have to do like a co-pilot based entry point. To I think Shawn and JC's point, you have to insert AI very judiciously. So there will be a hill climbing problem. And I think it's very hard to make a blanket claim. It's very dependent on the persona and the department, but we do see change happening. I think if you go to legacy industries, very high time industries, there is of course fear of getting replaced, but it's also lack of AI knowledge in the decision-making process and technology itself. So I think we have to keep those things in mind. We have to think about the Palantir aspect of how you do forward deployed work, how you change industry, change management. I think hard to give a simple answer. I think it's extremely nuanced in looking at all this. And we suspect change outside of Silicon Valley will be slower than we expect, but change will happen in phases.
Those are all great insights. We were having a conversation before we came in, and it was fun romp for about 45 minutes. One of the things that we were talking about was, is there a moat in all of this? We talked about, I'm a data guy for many years, so I always go hunting for the data, the holdout data, to do ML initially, and deep learning, and now generative. And so is it fair to say, as the speed of things is hard to predict, as you said, that things are changing? You said 2 months, right? It wasn't possible 2 months ago. It's possible now. How do you see the idea of a moat for a company? Is it having the holdout data? Is it an irreplaceable workflow? Is it trust? Like, what are the things that you look for as investors where you're like, okay, I got to lock in here, even though things are moving like in the order of days?
I'm definitely a workflow guy. I think everybody here, you've got hundreds of workflows that you're going through your week doing, and when you're used to it and it's getting the job done, you don't want to switch. It's annoying to like, there's another website that does it. Who cares? It's already working. So it has to be a pain point. So I think it's like identifying where are the pain points, and then you're the first one to get in there and actually solve the pain point in a way that people are like, it's done. I mean, who's looking for another rideshare company? You know, it's like, job's done. Like, move on to something else. You know, Google was doing keyword search, and now that job wasn't. We thought it was done, but it wasn't quite done because people weren't looking for a bunch of blue links. They were looking for answers, and then they had to like do more manual work to get there. So I think it's all about like getting to that workflow that you can really solve and takes no extra effort, and then making the customer happy.
Yeah, I think different depends on the business of a particular company. So they can have a different mode. Some companies data could be the mode. Some like irreplaceable workflow is the mode. Some trust is the mode. But in general, I think I agree with Shawn. In a replaceable workflow is a strong mode, and because the switching cost would be very high, and the data mode can be diluted because as a general purpose larger language model become more capable, more agentic, and then your data mode may wipe out over time. And the trust can be eroded just by a few serious life cycle incidents, right? Or data breach or whatever. So trust is not that deep mode to me, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel to me like the moats are fundamentally different than in the pre-AI world. But one I think is one point that's interesting to me is that there's a whole marketplace wave, obviously, throughout 2000s and the early 2010s, and then there's been sort of a drought. And I think there's some really interesting marketplace models with strong network effects, B2B marketplaces, and some that are B2C, but where the sort of wedge is offering a suite of AI workflow tools for free to either the supply or the demand side, and then they generate revenue through a take rate. And so we're seeing that in recruiting. Like a lot of folks use Paraform to hire, and part of the reason they're attractive is because they offer free services to the recruiters to help them do their job. Another called Jack and Jill in recruiting. In legal, there are folks building Main Street law firm equivalents now, but the reason they're able to do it is because they're offering, again, an AI operating system to these lawyers for free in exchange for a piece of the fee. And so I think that's really interesting, bringing back network effects, but with a different wedge.
I'm going to give a boring composite answer. I think there's a lot. I would say yes, human in the loop, high economic value workflows are really important. That's where stickiness comes. But it has to be played with a combination of data plus some sort of infrastructure. So I think the Palantir education, the Palantir digging into why it worked, what worked, why did they build Foundry finally, why did they go into AIP, is really important to understand. So for us at 8VC, I would say we're looking at travel very deeply. So we feel a Palantir-like play with our company Spotnana is going to be amazing. A Palantir-like play with our company Field Guide in audit and compliance will be amazing. A Palantir-like play with our company Tilda in clinical trials will be amazing. So it's very domain dependent. There are workflow places there, but you have to have a data layer somewhere in it. That would be the composite observation.
That's great. Let's go back to consumer for a little bit. So we talked a bunch about co-pilots and sort of, what's been solved or what has yet to be solved. If you had to, I'm a commerce guy, so, I've wanted to see the manifestation of a personal shopping agent for about 5 years now. I think the reality is the subsystems are still, a little ways away from having that manifest. But I'm curious, what are your views on what's going to happen? Is it going to be education? Is it going to be a health and wellness sort of thing? What's going to happen to fill a space like you were talking about and to say, okay, that problem is now solved? What's your prediction on that?
So you asked a bunch of different spaces. That my answer is yes. to all of them. It's I don't see a consumer category that has to do with information processing. Let's try to fly running around here. That won't get reinvented by AI. So, you know, a couple that we're excited about right now, I think of this, just call it generally relationship AI. I think if you've been on this planet long enough, you realize that relationships are the most fulfilling part of life. And, you know, have kids or a spouse or, you know, people at work and you know, old friends. And so, you know, just being great in those relationships is kind of hard. Like I'm 51 and I've read a bunch of these books and gone to marriage counseling, and like there's a lot of hard lessons that I did not know when I graduated from business school that, you know, I could have gotten contextually as I was screwing things up along the way. So excited about that. You mentioned the tutoring. You know, I think like there's no question that in many consumer products you can say like, what's the perfect consumer experience? I could just throw technology aside. Like in transportation, it's like teleportation. Well, AI doesn't let you teleport, so that, you can't fix that one yet. Tutoring, you can. I feel like maybe there's some underlying needs in like multimodal output where you're synchronizing, you know, text and drawing and voice. But there should be, for basically any subject, you know, an AI that's quizzes you. Hey, you know, how well do you know this? Let me ask you a couple questions. Like zeroes in on where you are and your readiness. There's this thing called zone of proximal learning where you're making it, you know, not too hard, not too easy, and it can kind of perfectly feed you best practices curriculum, keep you in that zone of proximal learning, you know, give you these engaging lessons based on what your interests are. So, yeah, there's no question to me that's one. You know, we have one in the nutrition space. If anybody's MyFitnessPal, you got to switch over to Alma. You just say, you know, here's what I had for lunch or dinner or whatever. Yeah. So anyway, long answer, but every one of those categories I think is going to get reinvented.
1 minute. Oh wow. Okay, let's do it. Let's keep going on that. You have a
Yeah, I mean,
get after it.
sorry. I mean, I agree completely with that. We're invested in a company called Speak, which is a language learning platform and one of the first to sort of scale over the last couple of years. And it's amazing how sticky a voice-based system can be on the consumer side and the types of retention profiles that you can see. And so I think our view is that across a bunch of the categories you listed, like the way that humans usually engaged with each other is through their eyes and their mouth and through voice, and that we're getting there. Like there's a bunch of incredible B2B voice AI solutions for truckers and for healthcare and a bunch of different categories, but it's expensive and there's a lot of work that goes into it. And so to make it scalable for consumers, I think, you know, we'll get there, but it's in process. And I think that's going to unlock a bunch of these categories that a ChatGPT still owns, but like tutoring, for instance, would benefit from a much more purpose-built solution. So it's super exciting on the consumer side.
On consumer side, I still have a question mark. Like the biggest competitor is general purpose chatbot, right? And in order for those category specific consumer app to take off, you really need to add lots of value on top of general purpose chatbot. Otherwise, why install another app, right?
I agree.
Hey, I can bring us home. As I was clutching my iPhone and looking at the questions that I wrote beforehand here, you were making me think, what's the winning distribution path? How do you guys think about that? You said messaging, general messaging app. Is it, you know, vertical, a vertical platform? Is it messaging app? Is it iOS? Like, what's the winner? Just really lightning round, real quick. What's the best distribution path for any of these as you see the world evolving next year? OS, messaging app, or vertical solution? My favorite e-commerce site. Bad example.
Well, there's only a few people who could have the operating system or the audience to leverage that. But if you have that, that's fantastic. Otherwise, you know, it's going to be hard for the vertical solutions. But, you know, there will still be winners. Yeah.
So I think the best one distribution would be you create a viral product and it distribute by itself.
Awesome.
I mean, I agree with that. Like, for at least, I mean, for both B2B and B2C, word of mouth is better than anything else. So.
You want to finish it up?
Nothing intelligent to add except, network effects matter. And network effects are often bespoke. I've spent half of my career on open source stuff, but I think network effects, verticalized or platformized, is kind of where it is. But more than that, I do not know.
Amazing. We could have gone on for a long time. I hope you enjoyed the banter here and a little bit apologize for the mic passing. We did pretty well, okay? Yeah? Thank you very much for your time. Have a safe trip home.